check that out. That is slap your grandma good. All right, welcome back. I've got a real special treat for you today. You all know that I've done a ton of videos about how to grow blueberries, how to care for blueberries, how to harvest the blueberries. And if you haven't seen those videos, I'll go ahead and link those in the end, and I'll try to put them in the description as well. All these blueberries you see here, as well as all these blueberries you see here, came out of our garden earlier this year and we froze them. What we're gonna do today is Chef Mrs. Sarge is gonna show you her special recipe on how to make blueberry pie. You're gonna love this, stay with me. All right, Mrs. Sarge, what's going into this pie crust?
I make it all butter pie crust, so in my bowl, I just have flour and salt, and that's it. I think in grams, so I have 363 grams of flour, which is like 2.5 cups of flour. And then I have about a stick and 3/4, it's 14 tablespoons of butter. And I shred my butter the day before, and then I put it in the freezer, because the thing about pie crust is that you want to have everything as cold as it could possibly be. So all I'm gonna do now is sprinkle my butter into my flour and salt mixture. And you can either use a pastry cutter or just use your fingers. I just use my fingers. And literally all I'm doing is just tossing the flour and the butter together. The technical term for it is called rubbing in. So for me, an all butter pie crust for me is super flaky. Think like if you've ever had a croissant where you get all those really yummy, flaky layers. That to me is what, and it tastes really good. Like there's nothing healthy about this. I just really like the way this one feels. I like the way that it tastes. What happens is when your pie crust hits the oven, all of these little, I don't know if you can see it, but do you see how my butter, like it kind of looks, I've got some pea-sized pieces of flour, of butter in here. Some are a little bit bigger than that. That's about what you want, because what's gonna happen is all of these butter lumps are gonna become part of the pie crust dough. And then eventually, when it goes into the oven, what happens is that the butter, these little pieces of butter melt, and that's what gives you all those delicious flaky layers. Excellent. All right, so this looks good. So the next thing that I'm going to do, I can tell you that start with 2 ounces of ice water. I'm going to be really honest with you, even though everything I do is usually measured precisely, when it comes to working with doughs, you kind of have to just feel around with it and eyeball it. But this is just ice water. I'm just gonna start adding a little bit of water at a time. I'm gonna toss it around. And what I want now is to add enough water to this mixture that if I go like this, it sticks together without crumbling. It obviously doesn't have enough moisture.
Can you show that again?
Yep.
Yep. For them.
So you want to add enough water to your flour and butter mixture so that when you squish it together, it holds together nicely.
Okay.
This isn't holding together nicely. So obviously it needs some more water.
Baking is chemistry, right? Like...
Baking is chemistry, but what you don't want to have happen, the reason you want everything so cold is you want to keep the butter as cold as possible for as long as possible, even while you're mixing, because you want your dough to have all those great butter lumps.
All right, and then when this is done...
I'm gonna turn it onto a clean floured surface, and I'm gonna give it a quick knead like you would do if you were making bread dough, pizza dough. Not a lot, because the thing about pastry is that you wanna handle it as little as possible. The more that you play with flour and water and butter, the more that you play with it, you develop the gluten in the flour. And gluten is good when you're making bread or pizza. Gluten is bad when you're making cookies, a cake, or pie dough.
Gotcha.
It's what makes it strong and chewy and sturdy, and it all holds together. Do you see how this has changed now, and all of a sudden it actually looks like dough? So I'm actually not going to add any more water to this.
Okay.
I'm just going to take some flour, already cleaned the counter, of course. And all I'm going to do is just give it just a couple of quick little, not too much, because you want to handle it as little as possible, but I do want to be able to roll it out tomorrow.
And what's the expression you always tell me? You can't be afraid of the pie crust, right?
You are the boss of your pie crust.
What does that mean?
It means don't be afraid of it. What I really say in my head, even as I'm telling myself that I am the boss of my pie crust, is that pie crust can smell fear.
Okay.
And it will crumble, it will misbehave. You have to be confident, be strong.
Got it.
All right, so I've actually played with this enough.
Okay.
So all I'm gonna do now, yeah, that's fine. We're gonna see what happens to it while it's in the fridge. Might still be a little bit dry, that's all right. So now what I'm gonna do is break it in half. I forgot to bring my pastry cutter in with me.
You want to pause it? Into a knife. All right, improvisation. Look at that.
Why don't I want to tear it? Because again, I don't want to play with it too much. And oh, here's a good one. Do you see that big lump of butter that's right there?
That's good, right?
That's what you want to see. Is you do want to see.
Here, let me show them again.
See how you've got right here?
Down in the bottom. It's 6 o'clock. Yep.
Pardon my hands.
Yep.
Right there.
That's good things, right?
You want to have a couple of, you want to be able to see, there's another one right there.
Yep.
And you can kind of see that I still have some lumps of butter in there. I want that.
That's flavor.
That is flavor. Everything is better with butter.
Exactly.
Here we go. That's it. So now all I'm going to do, I've kind of mushed it down into some discs, and all I'm going to do is wrap these up in saran wrap, and they're going to go in the refrigerator until tomorrow. And why do we put it in the refrigerator? Because you want to relax the gluten.
Okay.
That's going to give it a chance to kind of lose that bread dough texture. And you want all of those good little lumps of butter, and the ones that you can't see, those are going to firm up again.
Okay.
And that's what we want.
All right.
All right, so yesterday we made the pie crust. It's been sitting in the refrigerator overnight. You can see that all the butter has reformed and it's nice and solid. So all I'm gonna do now is roll out my bottom crust and roll out my top crust. I like to roll between pieces of parchment paper just because I feel like I have more control over the dough and it doesn't stick. So we rolled out our pie crust. I can still see the lumps of butter, so we're good. And what I like to do is once I get it into my pie plate, I put it back in the refrigerator just so the butter doesn't melt. We are rolling out the top of the pie crust, and all I'm doing is just kind of moving it gently, because the more that you handle pie crust, the tougher it's going to be, but I also don't want it to stick, so I'm just kind of picking it up and moving it as I roll it. There's my lump of butter. That's what I want to see, because as soon as that hits the oven, it is going to melt and create a wonderful flaky pocket. All right, so now we're going to make our filling for the blueberry pie. I have about 6 cups of blueberries in here. I weighed it. It came out to be about 24 ounces. If you're using frozen blueberries, it's just a bag of frozen blueberries. And in my bowl, I have 3/4 of a cup of sugar, which is 143 grams. I have 1/2 cup of AP flour, which is about 70 grams. And then I have a half teaspoon of cinnamon because I think the cinnamon just adds to the blueberry flavor. Going to add the blueberry pie filling to the pie crust. One escaped.
Man down, man down.
Man down. I know it looks like there's a lot of extra flour, sugar, cinnamon mixture in here, and there is, but you want to keep that because that's your thickening agent. That's what's going to make a syrup in the pie.
So when you melt your ice cream over it, it's going to mix with that and make it all yum yums.
We'll talk about the ice cream later. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I have about a tablespoon of lemon juice. It's about half a lemon if you're squeezing your own lemons. And all I'm gonna do is just kind of pour that onto the top because a little bit of citrus in with fruit always just brightens the flavor. This is a tablespoon of butter that I have just chopped into rough chunks. I'm gonna sprinkle that over my blueberries because let's face it, who doesn't love butter? Butter makes it better.
Everything is better with butter.
Everything's better with butter. There we go, and now it's ready for the top crust. We are gonna add the top crust to the pie. Carefully without tearing it, maybe. The more that you handle pie crust, the tougher that it becomes. So I always try to use my hands as little as possible once it gets to this point. Was in the fridge, so it's a little bit sticky, but I want it to be nice and cold because again, I want that butter to stay in chunks.
And that's the hardest part of the pie, right? Is if you're doing a homemade crust.
They smell fear.
Yeah.
They smell fear. Some people are amazing pie crust artists. I am not a pie crust artist. I consider my pies to be what you call rustic, which means that, yeah, they just kind of look, they look like they look. I'm trimming a little bit of the excess pie crust around the edges, and then I'm gonna crimp it to seal everything inside, and we'll be ready for the oven.
Now, off camera, we were talking about the pie plate. You all didn't see, but it was just a glass, what, Pyrex or something?
Yeah, this is just a Pyrex pie plate.
But you were saying it really doesn't matter, right? They can use
It
aluminum.
is a personal, it's personal taste. I know a lot of people are lucky enough to have, you know, their grandmother's or even their great grandmother's favorite pie plate. I have used glass pie plates. I have used disposable pie tins. Those are absolutely fine. I have used aluminum pie plates. I mean, what I'm gonna say to you is that the glass ones, they look really pretty. You can see what's going on, obviously, and with your pie while it's in the oven. Glass is kind of hard to bake in. It's, I don't know, they don't come out, in my opinion, as great as they would in an aluminum pie plate. That's my experience. Some of you might have a favorite pie plate that you have been using for years and years and your pies come out perfect every single time. That's amazing. I don't have a favorite. I'm still looking for my favorite pie plate. I don't have one.
All right, and talk to us about the crimping here. Is there any tips or tricks you have for this part?
Pie crust can smell fear. All I'm really doing is so this is where you can get fancy. I could have done a lattice top, which is the crisscross. I could have stamped out designs from the top of my crust if I wanted to. Really, all that you're trying to do is seal the edges, seal the filling, so that things don't leak out in your oven because no one likes to clean out the bottom of the oven after you've baked a fruit pie. So what I'm gonna do with mine when it goes in the oven, I like to put my pies on a cookie sheet or a sheet pan with some parchment paper on it. If anything drips, it's going to drip onto the parchment paper. It is not going to drip onto the bottom.
That's a good little trick.
Of your oven.
And that is already starting to look beautiful. Y'all, Sarge is going to be eating good tonight.
Should we mention that we made ice cream also?
You can tell them about that now if you want.
We made ice cream last night, so this is just an aside that I asked for my birthday because I never got to take the ice cream course in culinary school. I asked for an ice cream maker for my birthday this summer, which my wonderful husband bought for me. And we have been making ice cream. This is what, our fourth batch that we've done, I think. And I hope I don't offend anybody when I say this. It's limoncello flavored ice cream. For those of you that are afraid, actually, whenever you hear alcohol in a baked good, there are really strict rules about how much alcohol you can add to a pastry or a baked good. Without having to worry about asking someone for an ID if they're going to eat or drink anything that you've made. So my limoncello ice cream, the entire thing, and it's going to make, I think we said, a quart of ice cream. It has less, it's got like an ounce and a half of limoncello in it. That's dispersed among all the other ingredients. It just adds flavor to it. That's it.
And for those of you, if you don't know what limoncello is, it is an Italian liqueur, obviously lemon flavored, and one of our favorites in this household.
I'm just going to poke a couple little slits in the top. You absolutely, so I know I sealed all of the edges. You absolutely need to have a way for steam to escape from your pie. If you do not give it a way to escape, it will find its own way to escape. And that's when your oven
It's gonna be messy.
becomes a mess. That's it. It is ready for the oven. If you want to, and I'm thinking about this now, you can give it a little egg wash.
Oh, that's right.
Just to, if you want to, just to brown it, crack an egg, add some water to it, beat it, and
That
just brush it
adds a
across
little bit
the
more
top.
color and flavor.
It'll add a little bit more color to it. You can also you can brush it with milk. Probably gonna brush it with milk only because I have a lot of milk that I would like to use up. And then it's going on its sheet pan and going into the oven at 425 degrees.
For how long?
Till it's done.
Honestly, how do they know when it's done?
You know,
By color?
honestly, I have to go look at my recipe. I forgot to write
Okay, we'll
down.
get that on the next segment. Okay. Okay, so what did you say, 425?
I was right. So sometimes one of the conversations we have in the house all the time is when I say to him, you know, I just need to go with what I know. I knew how long I was supposed to cook it for. I just needed to double check. This is going into a 425 degree oven. I don't do Celsius. You can do that conversion yourself. 425 degree oven for 35 to 45 minutes. It's going to depend on your oven. What I look for is I look for little bubbles to start to come out from the slits. I want a nice brown crust. If you feel like your pie crust is getting a little bit too brown, you can cover the edges with aluminum foil, or if you feel like the top is getting too brown, cover the whole thing with aluminum foil. It will continue to cook, but you won't burn your pie crust. So this is going in the oven. So this actually took closer to an hour, which is perfectly fine for fruit pie because my fruit was frozen when it went in and the pie crust was super cold. So that's just a recipe. The time, it's a guide. You just kind of look at it. So this was almost an hour. It's going to cool for a couple of hours because I want that syrup on the inside to thicken so that everything doesn't fall apart when we slice it. I'm pretty happy.
It looks awesome. So I can't just like cut myself a slice now and dig in?
No, you'll hurt yourself.
It's like molten lava.
Yes.
All right. So we will wait a few hours and then we will do a little reaction for y'all. All right, y'all. This is the moment you've all been waiting for. There is a slice of my blueberry pie. There is that limoncello ice cream with a little bit of lemon zest on top. Y'all, I can't wait to dig in on this one. So the trick here is you got to get a little piece of the ice cream with a little piece of the pie. All right, check that out. That is slap your grandma good. Chef Mrs. Sarge, you have outdone yourself. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Y'all, I'm gonna kill this so you all can just be envious. Cook this one at home, drop your questions down below. If you enjoyed this, please let me and Chef Mrs. Sarge know. We will see you next time. Keep planting your seeds. Keep stacking your silver. This is Prepping with Sarge.